phone buzzed on the passenger seat while I was merging onto the highway. I already knew it was my mother before I even looked. She had a way of texting at exactly the wrong moment. When I was driving, when I was in a meeting, when I was finally starting to feel okay about my life. I glanced down at the red light. We need to talk about Thanksgiving. Your father and I have an announcement. I set the phone face down and kept driving. That was the thing about my family. The announcements. There was always an announcement. And somehow every single announcement in my life had a way of reminding me exactly where I stood. Let me back up. I'm the older one. 31 years old, financial analyst at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, Ohio. I've been paying my own bills since I was 22. My student loans, my rent, my car insurance, my groceries, all of it on my own from the day I graduated. I wasn't given a head start. I wasn't handed a safety net. I built everything I have by showing up early and staying late and eating sad desk lunches for years. My younger sister Brooke is 27. She's never paid rent a day in her life. That's not me being mean. That's just the truth. Brooke is the baby. She's always been the baby. She's charming and pretty, and she has this laugh that makes everyone in the room turn around and smile. And my parents looked at her from the day she was born like she was something they'd been waiting for. I used to tell myself it wasn't intentional, that my parents didn't mean to love her differently, that maybe I was imagining it. I stopped telling myself that when I was about 14. That was the year my parents took Brooke to Disney World for her birthday, and I got a card with a $20 bill in it because, as my father said, you're old enough to do something you actually want. I used that $20 to buy school supplies. I didn't say anything. I just put the receipt on my desk and looked at it for a long time. It went on like that. Every birthday, every holiday, every milestone, Brooke got the bigger gift, the louder celebration, the more expensive everything. When she made the volleyball team, my parents threw a dinner party. When I got a full academic scholarship to Ohio State, my mother said, "That's wonderful, honey," and then asked Brooke if she wanted to go shopping to celebrate the end of summer. I am not exaggerating. I have replayed these moments so many times that I know I am not exaggerating. By the time I was in college, I had mostly made peace with it. Or at least I'd gotten good at pretending I had. I called home once a week. I sent my parents updates about my grades, my internships, a research paper I'd co-authored with a professor. My mother responded to most of them with heart emojis. My father usually didn't respond at all. When I got my first real job offer, $48,000 a year, benefits, a 401k, I called home to tell them. My father said, "Good. Now you won't have to ask us for anything." My mother asked if I wanted her to mail me some of Brooke's old dorm stuff since Brooke was upgrading her apartment. I said, "No, thank you. I unpacked my boxes alone in a studio apartment in Columbus, and I ate cereal for dinner, and I cried a little, and then I got up the next morning and went to work." That was 9 years ago. A lot changed in 9 years. I got promoted. I got promoted again. I bought a condo. I paid off my car. I started building a life that felt genuinely mine, with friends I loved and a job I was proud of, and a little balcony where I drank coffee on Sunday mornings and didn't think about my family for whole hours at a stretch. I also met Daniel. Daniel came into my life the way good things tend to, quietly, without drama, when I wasn't looking. We met at a work conference in Cincinnati. He was presenting on infrastructure investment. I was in the back row eating a granola bar and trying to stay awake after a red-eye flight. He caught me yawning, and instead of being offended, he paused mid-sentence and said, "Coffee break in 5 minutes, I promise." Everyone laughed. I put away the granola bar. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. Careful, steady, real. He knew everything about my family before he ever met them. He knew about the Disney World birthday. He knew about the scholarship card. He knew about the day I called to say I'd been promoted to senior analyst, and my mother said, "Oh, that's great. Hey, can you ask your HR if they have any openings?" Brooke is still figuring out her path. He listened to all of it without ever once saying I was overreacting. That alone told me everything I needed to know about him. We got engaged in March, just the two of us, on a rainy Tuesday evening in the kitchen of our apartment with takeout going cold on the counter. He'd had the ring for 2 weeks and couldn't wait any longer. It was perfect. It was so completely us. I told my parents the next day. My mother screamed. My father said, "About time." Then my mother asked if I'd told Brooke yet, because Brooke would want to be involved in the planning. Brooke called me that evening. She congratulated me for exactly 45 seconds and then spent 20 minutes talking about what she wanted to wear to the wedding. I got off the phone and Daniel handed me a glass of wine without saying a word. We set the wedding for the following October, a small venue in the Columbus area, about 80 guests, nothing extravagant. We were paying for it ourselves. Daniel's parents offered to contribute something toward the rehearsal dinner, which we gratefully accepted. My parents offered nothing. I hadn't expected them to. What I hadn't expected was what happened at Thanksgiving. We drove up to my parents' house in Dayton, a 3-hour drive, and I brought a pie I'd made from scratch because that's what I do. I always bring something. I always try. Even after everything, I always try, and I wish I could explain why, except that I think somewhere in me there is still a 22-year-old girl who wants her parents to look at her like she did something right. Dinner was fine. Normal. Brooke was there, beautiful and loud, wearing a new coat I hadn't seen before. My mother fussed over her the whole meal, kept touching her hair, kept refilling her glass first. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table once, and I squeezed back. After dinner, my father stood up and said he had an announcement. I remember looking at Daniel. I remember thinking, here we go. My father cleared his throat. He said that he and my mother had been doing a lot of thinking and that they wanted to do something special for the family. He said they had worked hard all their lives and they wanted to give back to the people they loved. He looked at Brooke and he smiled. That specific smile he had that I'd spent my whole life trying to earn. And he said that they were giving Brooke a down payment on a house. $80,000. $80,000. Brooke burst into tears. My mother burst into tears. They hugged across the table. My father was beaming. I sat there. I kept my face completely still. I have a lot of practice keeping my face still. Then my mother looked at me. I felt it before I saw it, the way you feel bad news before it arrives. And she said, "And for you, sweetheart, we put together something too." She went to the counter. She came back and set an envelope in front of me. I opened it. Inside was a card, a generic congratulations card, the kind you buy at a gas station, and a folded check. I unfolded the check. $500. The memo line said, "Wedding gift." I looked at the check for a long time. Long enough that Daniel put his hand on my back. Long enough that Brooke stopped crying and went quiet. Long enough that even my father seemed to realize something was wrong. My mother said, "We figured you and Daniel are doing so well, you don't really need the help. And Brooke is still getting on her feet, so," I said, "I see." I put the check back in the envelope. I folded the envelope. I put it in my coat pocket. I excused myself to use the restroom, and I stood in the upstairs bathroom of the house I grew up in, and I ran cold water over my wrists, and I breathed. $500. For a wedding, $80,000. For a down payment, for a sister who had never once paid her own utilities. Not because they didn't have the money. They had the money. They'd had it for years. Savings, my father's pension, inheritance from my grandmother that they'd never mentioned until now, apparently. They had the money. They just didn't think I needed it. Because I was capable. Because I'd never asked. Because somewhere along the way, my competence had become permission for them to keep taking me for granted. I came back downstairs. I ate a piece of pie. I said everything was delicious. I helped clear the table. On the drive home, I didn't cry. Daniel talked about logistics, the drive, the timing, whether we'd stop for gas, and I let him because I needed the sound of ordinary things. Somewhere past Xenia, he got quiet. Then he said, "I'm sorry. Not I'm sorry for your family, or I'm sorry you have to deal with this. Just, I'm sorry." Like he was grieving something with me. I leaned my head against the window and watched the highway lights. "I don't want to keep doing this," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. He just said, "Okay." Here is the thing no one tells you about pulling back from your family. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It's not a speech. It's not a door slam. It's 100 small decisions that accumulate until one day you realize you're simply no longer available in the way you used to be. You stop calling first. You stop emailing updates. You stop driving 3 hours to bring a pie. I I returned the check 2 weeks later. I deposited it, held it for exactly 14 days, long enough to be sure, and then I wrote my own check for $500 and mailed it back with a note that said, "Thank you for thinking of us. We've decided to return this so you can put it towards something that matters to you." I did not sign it with love. My mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She said she didn't understand, that they'd meant it as a gift, that I was being oversensitive. She said Brooke was upset that I hadn't congratulated her properly on the house. She said my father was hurt. I listened to the voicemail once and then I deleted it. My aunt, my mother's sister, who had been at Thanksgiving, who had sat at the end of the table and gone very, very still when the envelope came out, called me 3 days later. She didn't pretend she hadn't seen what happened. She said, "I owe you an apology. I've watched this my whole life and I never said anything and I should have." I sat down when she said that. I hadn't expected it and it hit me somewhere I didn't know was still open. We talked for 2 hours. She told me things I'd half known for years, that my parents had always seen Brooke as the one who needed protecting, that they'd always assumed I would be fine, that being capable had cost me in ways they never stopped to consider. She wasn't making excuses for them. She was just telling me the truth, which was more than anyone in my family had done in 31 years. I asked her why she was telling me now. She said, "Because you're about to get married and you deserve to walk into that day without carrying all of this." We cried a little. Then we made plans for her to come to Columbus the following month. The months between Thanksgiving and my wedding were quieter than I expected. My parents called a few times. I answered twice, kept the conversation short, didn't offer anything. My mother sent a card for Christmas with a check inside, $100 this time, as if the number was an apology, and I didn't cash it. Brooke texted occasionally, usually when she had a question about the wedding that was really about her. What are the bridesmaids wearing? Can she bring a +1? Was the venue going to have good lighting for photos? I answered when I felt like it. Our wedding was in the second week of October. The leaves were turning. The venue was a restored farmhouse east of Columbus. All white walls and wood beams and candlelight. 82 people. My aunt was in the front row. Daniel's whole family flew in from Portland, and his mother brought me a necklace that had been his grandmother's and put it around my neck herself, and that moment undid me in the best possible way. My parents were there. I had invited them because not inviting them would have made the day about them, and I refused to do that. They sat where I put them, 2/3 of the way back, and they were polite and appropriate, and my father shook Daniel's hand and my mother wore a dress she bought for the occasion. Brooke was not a bridesmaid. She sat with my parents and took a lot of photos for her Instagram. During the reception, my mother found me by the bar. She put her hand on my arm and said she was proud of me. She said it sincerely, I think. She meant it in whatever way she was capable of meaning it. I said, "Thank you for coming." That was all I said. Not thank you for everything, or I love you, or it means so much. Just thank you for coming, because that was the true and correct thing, and I was done saying things I didn't mean to make other people comfortable. The dancing started. Daniel spun me around the floor to a song we'd argued about for 6 months and ultimately agreed on together. My aunt was laughing at a table in the corner. Outside the windows, the Ohio countryside was going gold in the last light. I thought about the check. $500 and a gas station card. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to get my parents to see me the way I saw myself. I thought about how long I'd been waiting for an announcement that never came. Some moment where they'd stand up at dinner and say, "We see you. We're proud of you. Here is proof that you matter as much." And I realized, standing in the middle of my wedding reception with my husband's hand in mine and my aunt's laugh carrying across the room, I didn't need it anymore. Not because the wound had closed, exactly, but because I'd built a life so full and so real that there wasn't room in it anymore for the empty space they'd left. About 2 months after the wedding, my parents called to tell me that Brooke was having trouble with the house payments. The property taxes were higher than expected, and she'd had some issues at her job, and they were tapped out from the down payment, and they were wondering if Daniel and I might be able to help bridge a gap. I let my father finish. Then I said I needed to think about it and I'd get back to them. I went to my desk. I took out a note card, the nice ones, cream cardstock, that I used for thank you notes. I wrote 4 sentences. I said I hoped things stabilized for Brooke soon. I said that Daniel and I had our own financial commitments and weren't in a position to take on additional ones. I said I wished them well, and at the bottom I wrote one more line. I said, I'm returning the energy you've always invested in me. I folded the card, I put it in an envelope, and I tucked inside it, just before I sealed it, the $100 check my mother had sent at Christmas, still uncashed, still clean. I mailed it on a Tuesday morning on my way to work. The air was cold and bright, and the leaves were all gone from the trees, and everything looked clean and stripped down to its bones, the way Ohio gets in December. And I stood at the mailbox for a second after I dropped it in. Then I got in my car and I drove to work, and I bought myself a coffee, and I sat at my desk and I started my day. That was 8 months ago. My parents haven't called since. Brooke texted once, just once, to tell me I'd really hurt the family. I read it, set my phone down, and finished the report I was working on. My aunt came to Columbus for New Year's. We went to a dinner with Daniel and 2 of our closest friends, and we stayed out until 1 in the morning and laughed until we couldn't breathe. She's coming again in the spring. We're talking about a trip to Savannah in the fall, just the 2 of us, something she's wanted to do for years. I think about who I was at 14 sometimes. The kid who put the receipt from $20 of school supplies on her desk and just looked at it. I think about her a lot, actually. I wish I could tell her what I know now, that the silence she kept, the competence she showed, the way she just kept going without asking for anything was not an invitation for people to keep taking. That she was allowed to want more. That she deserved more. She did deserve more. She did deserve more. But here is what I also know now. You can spend your whole life waiting for the people who were supposed to show up for you first. You can perform and achieve and stay on the phone and bring the pie and keep your face perfectly still when the envelope comes out. You can do all of it, and it might not change a single thing. Or you can take the $100 back. You can write the 4 sentences. You can stand at a mailbox in the cold December light and let it go. And then you can get in your car and drive toward the life you already built. The one that's waiting for you. The one that was yours all along. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that Thanksgiving. Not in the dramatic way. Just quietly. The way you think about things when the noise finally settles down. My parents made a choice. They made it over and over again, for decades, and they probably told themselves it wasn't a choice at all, that they were just responding to what each of us needed. Brooke needed the help. I didn't. And in a way, they were right about that second part. I didn't need it. But that's not why they decided. They decided because I had never fallen apart in front of them. I had never asked. I had made myself so reliable, so low maintenance, so consistently fine, that they stopped wondering if I was fine. They just assumed it. That's the thing about being capable. People stop checking on you, and at some point, if you're not careful, you start believing that your silence means you're okay, when really you've just gotten very good at not asking for what you deserve. I think about the 14-year-old version of myself sitting with that $20 bill a lot. She didn't make a scene. She put it toward something useful. She kept going. That's not a flaw, that's intelligence, and it's resilience, and it served her well. But resilience without self-knowledge can become a trap. You can endure so much for so long that you forget endurance was never supposed to be the whole plan. What I had to learn, slowly, the hard way, is that integrity doesn't mean absorbing everything quietly and asking for nothing. It means being honest about what's real. The $500 check wasn't a gift. It was a signal, loud and clear, about how my parents had always measured me. And returning it wasn't pettiness. It was accuracy. It was me finally saying, I see what this is, and I'm not going to pretend it's something else. Daniel understood that. My aunt understood it. The people who actually knew me understood that I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear, probably for the first time in my life. Clarity is a form of integrity. It's uncomfortable and it costs something, but it's honest, and I'd spent 31 years being everything except honest about what this family had cost me. Here's what I believe about how things unfold. When you keep giving more than you receive, when you keep showing up for people who have already decided your worth, eventually the imbalance corrects itself, not through drama, but through distance. Through a check in the mail, through 4 quiet sentences on cream cardstock. The correction doesn't feel like victory. It feels like relief. Like setting something down that you'd been carrying so long you'd forgotten it wasn't yours to carry. Brooke will figure it out or she won't. My parents will understand or they won't. That's not mine anymore. What's mine is the farmhouse venue with the wood beams and the candlelight. Daniel's hand. My aunt's laugh from across a room. A Sunday morning on my balcony. Coffee going warm, thinking about nothing in particular. I earned that life. Not because I suffered more than anyone else. I didn't. But because I kept my head down and built it, quietly, without waiting for permission. And that is what nobody can take back.